Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another video. This time it is my favorite comic books part 5. Again with this series I showcase 2 books that I really like. I'll talk to you a little bit about them and that's it. So we're going to start off with this one right here. War Against Crime number 11. This is one of my favorite books for many reasons. This is my favorite mummy cover. You know, I think it goes for all collectors, but especially with pre-code collectors, horror collectors, comic book collectors, they like to collect certain things when it comes to covers. Yes, people like collecting first appearances and all those things, but when it comes to certain covers in the pre-code or horror comic collecting community, there are certain things that we like. For me, I like mummy covers. You know, I like cemetery covers, things like that. Some people like zombie covers. Some people like decapitated head covers. Those are cool too. But there's usually a theme when it comes, because there are not a whole lot of first appearances in that genre. Okay, so people like to cover collect and will go after certain elements. And like I just said, one of mine is mummies, and I think this is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, mummy cover. I think it's beautifully drawn by Johnny Craig. Anything that Johnny Craig draws, I think is beautiful. And, you know, I regret leaving the hobby in the mid-90s, and, you know, around that time probably would have been great to have met Johnny Craig locally, because, you know, he lives in Pennsylvania, and I'm pretty sure that every now and then he would go to a local con in Pennsylvania, or maybe even venture into New Jersey around the Philadelphia area. You know, Philadelphia is very close to the border of New Jersey, especially where I live. So it's not too strange to find some of those artists that live in that area that will come over the state line. And it's a shame that I never got a chance to meet him. He died in 2001. But anyway, he made a lot of great contributions to the comic book community, I would say. It's also the first EC, and we talked about there's not too many firsts. Well, here there is a first. It's the first EC horror cover. Even here, this War Against Crime became Volta Horror by issue 12, the next issue. And it still says War Against Crime. It says crime, right? And they're introducing the story from the Volta Horror, which is the cover story. But here they got rid of the crime, and they immediately put horror. So they knew once they put those horror stories in their comics, as they did with Crime Patrol, and I think it was Gunslinger. Did Gunslinger have the Haunt of Fear first? No, I think it went from Gunslinger to Haunt of Fear without introducing any horror elements in an issue of Gunslinger when it was called Gunslinger. Unlike War Against Crime, introduced the Volta Horror, unlike Crime Patrol, which introduced the Crypt of Terror. So it was a little different there. But anyway, it really started that new trend that they found out that people really like the horror stories, and they just said, get rid of the crime stories, or at least most of them, and we'll do this. It's more profitable and probably more creative. So that's one of my favorite books. Second, here's another one. Last one for this video. Marvel Spotlight number 5. We're keeping somewhat of a horror theme in this video. Here we have the introduction of the Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider. Now, I know Ghost Rider, the character Ghost Rider, named Ghost Rider, made his first appearance, I think, in the 50s in an Atlas book. It might have been Ghost Rider number 1. I don't know. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. But I know there were 3 of them, or up until this point, with Johnny Blaze being the 3rd. I think there was an original Ghost Rider in the 50s. Then I think there was the Phantom Ghost Rider that came out in the 60s. And then here in the early 70s, you have the Ghost Rider that most people are familiar with, and probably the most popular one of the 3 up until that point. I know there's been several other Ghost Riders since this time. But anyway, here's the first appearance of the Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider. And I've mentioned earlier, I never was really a big fan of the frames that Marvel was doing in the early 70s. You know, I mentioned that about the Luke Cage frame. You know, the Luke Cage frame is not bad. I don't hate it. But it's not one of my favorites. But this, I like. It's similar to the Luke Cage in that it has a black background. So it's always cool to have a book that has a nice black background and is in good shape. This one's in pretty good shape. This one's a 7.5. And yeah, I was really thrilled to get this one. I liked the character of Ghost Rider. I didn't mind the Nicolas Cage portrayal of Ghost Rider in the first Ghost Rider. I couldn't get through the second one. I just didn't care. But I thought he was okay. You know, he's Nicolas Cage. He's going to ham it up anyway. Oddly mentioned that, odd fact is that Nicolas Cage, as you know, his last name is not really Cage. And I mentioned a moment ago the character Luke Cage. Well, that's where Nicolas Cage got his last name, where he decided to change his last name to. Because as most of us know, Nicolas Cage is a huge comic book fan and had the first appearance of Superman, had many other books. But he was a big fan of comic books. So instead of keeping his original last name, which I believe is Coppola, he changed it to one of his favorite, if not his favorite, I think it was one of his favorite. I think Superman's his favorite comic book character. But one of his favorite comic book characters, Luke Cage, and that's where he got his name. So it's just funny, I mentioned Luke Cage about the frame in the books, and Nicolas Cage, the guy who took Luke Cage's name, well, at least part of it, portrayed Ghost Rider in the movie. So here we go. Definitely one of my favorite characters from the Bronze Age, Ghost Rider. I would like one day to get a Ghost Rider #1. That's one of the early Bronze issue ones that I don't have. But I would like to get that one day, because I am a big fan of Ghost Rider, or at least the Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider. But one of the things that I remember when I first when I was trying to get all these Bronze Age characters, not counting Wolverine, not counting the Punisher, because they're in a level all their own, but some of the Bronze Age characters like Moon Knight, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Ghost Rider at the time when I was trying to get these, Blade, Ghost Rider was one of the more expensive ones to get. I mean, Moon Knight was, I think, the most expensive out of the ones I just mentioned, but Ghost Rider was a close second. I remember I got my 8.0 Blade right around the time I got these. Not that much. Yeah, it was an 8.0, so it was fetching a little bit more money than a 5.0, right? But it wasn't as much as this one. This one I paid a little bit more for this one. Not a whole lot more, but a little bit more, and it's probably 7.5. But the cheaper ones were Luke Cage and Iron Fist, I think was the cheapest one. But I remember Ghost Rider, it was one of the more expensive ones to get from those characters I mentioned in that era. But it was nice to get. It was really nice to get Ghost Rider and finally add him to my collection. I've known about Ghost Rider when I first started collecting. And again, it was one of those books that, I said, yeah, eventually I'll get to it, and I forget about it. And when I finally got to it, it was pretty cool. So anyway, thank you for watching. Tell me in the comments, what are some of your favorite comics? Maybe we have some of the similar tastes. Maybe we don't. Maybe I will learn a few things from you. But there'll be more of these videos. This is an ongoing series, so hopefully you'll see another one within a month or two. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care.